All right, it is a Thursday. We finally have snow in the Erie area, which means that winter is officially upon us. It means that we actually feel like we're getting into the winter sports season, finally. It's been a chaotic fall, but a fun fall, and we're happy to be with you a day after we normally join you on this program. Off the record happening last night, because the Otters are in action tonight in what I feel like has been a road trip that spanned the entire month of October into November. But anyway, I digress. Welcome in, everyone. Glad to have you back. It's been a week since we've been with you. Didn't get a chance to do rapid reaction last weekend. Apologies for that. Rob and I were a little under the weather and running around doing some different things, but happy to be back in the saddle here on the Gem City Sports Podcast. Glad you're with us. However you may be watching, wherever you may be tuning in tonight, we're thankful for you, and we're thankful that you're part of our broadcast. Our show, as always, in our network is brought to you by Rebich Investments, keeping financial guidance simple. If you want more info, go to the website, www.rebichinvestments.com, or you can call their phone number. It's super easy during normal business hours at 814-734-3433, 814-734-3433. Rebich Investments, keeping financial guidance simple. Call today for more information. Busy show tonight. Question is, where do we get started? High school football for Erie County is done. For other counties, not completely done, but tonight we do a little bit of a hybrid show, and we figured because there's still so much drama about what could be coming down the pike with classification realignment and potential new coaches and end-of-season debrief that we would do one of many season debrief shows for Erie County football tonight. We'll also preview some of the games that are still going on because there are still teams that we look at that will be impactful and impacted this weekend in high school football playoffs. Let's talk to Rob Matz, who's been running around the country, it seems, for the last few weeks. You were traveling south for multiple games over the weekend, Rob. You just had to travel to Ohio yesterday. Have you gotten any chance to sleep at all? I feel like this last 3 weeks have been a blur, my friend.
A lot of broken sleep. And honestly, though, I can't believe that for us up north, that the season's over.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's going to be the theme. It's funny because we sat here, 2 weeks ago, and we thought, all right, well, we know that, GM, if they can get through Oil City in 4A, they're going to be a force in the state playoffs because they would get a home game. We're going to talk about Oil City in a few minutes and even mention some GM with our conversation later. And we even gave, I thought, the Erie County teams in 3A last weekend as good of a chance as they'd ever have. And we're going to start with that. But I am like you. I'm a little surprised that the season's already done. And I think, maybe this is us just getting hoodwinked every year. We think that Erie County teams have a really good opportunity to beat the Mercer County teams and vice versa. But I really did think this year that this was going to be a year where at least you'd see down to the wire finishes. And we got a little bit of that in a game, but history runs its course one more time in 2025, Rob.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, if you want to start with Fort LaBeouf Hickory, Fort LaBeouf came to play. And I think, Braden and I, we were watching in pregame, and you could tell Hickory has been there before, very loose when they came out. But I think they took LaBeouf a little bit lightly, and LaBeouf, had a missed field goal, and they didn't punch it in right before the half. Because going into the fourth quarter, that's a 14-10 game. Yeah. But then Hickory just really turned it on. And, when I look at that game, Dungy, not only is he a great quarterback, but for what he did and the way he came downhill from his free safety spot was really impressive for his size. He covers a lot of ground quickly, and he's looking to cause a lot of problems. And then Kelvin Morrison, he's everything more than advertised. They don't really play him a whole lot on defense, but when they needed him on a third down situation in the second half, he had the pick six. They just said, just put him in the game in the secondary. And that was really the turning point of the game.
Yeah, I think when we start at the top of these reactions, and we didn't get a chance to do so over the weekend, but I think that still is fresh in our mind here. To me, when you look at the score sheet from this game, if you didn't tell me the final score, I'd tell you that Fort LaBeouf probably played a Fort LaBeouf style game and had a chance to win. They ran the ball for over 250 yards. For large parts of the game on offense. And I think this is a tale of the LaBeouf offense and the Hickory offense both playing well. I thought Fort LaBeouf did exactly what they had to do, right? I didn't give an exact number out there, but Rob, I think you and I would have agreed they got to go for more than 200 plus of the ground. They're going to have to get a couple of big defensive stops, which they did in the first half. They're going to have to capitalize off of short fields, which they did not. But I think the box score to me would indicate, all right, LaBeouf kept this game close, and that was the case. But I think maybe what we didn't touch on, and maybe this was something that we just assumed everyone knew, is that Hickory could take things up to 5th or 6th gear, which Fort LaBeouf maybe had a 4th gear, and maybe they didn't have gear 5, gear 6. I just think when you look at the totality of this game, the box score would tell you the Bison didn't play badly at all, specifically for 3 quarters. In fact, Rob, I think they played the game they wanted to play, and you were there, you were watching. For 3 quarters, they played Fort LaBeouf style football, and Hickory wasn't either not ready for it, or they didn't assume that they'd be able to hold on for that long.
Well, they really controlled the 2nd and 3rd quarter. LaBeouf did, and they had long drives. They ate a ton of clock. The crazy thing is the game went on. Dominic Walters, he ended up putting the ball in the air 30 times. He completed 17, but he had a couple big turnovers. No, everything was going perfect for them, other than they missed a field goal, barely missed it to the right, and then they had a little bit of an issue. Dominic Walters did score on a power play that was called back for legal formation, and then right as the half ended, he tried to go off left guard tackle area, and he got stuffed. And as time ran out, and that just was a killer. But you'd think they would be deflated, and they weren't. I mean, they came out and they drove down the field and scored. They were made it a 14-10 game at that point, and going into the 4th quarter, and again they chewed so much of the clock. But Hickory, again, as you said, they can score. They can score in bunches. They can do it well. Yeah. They had 5 senior offensive linemen who they've really rode. And, Hickory, they've gone through a lot of injuries as well. They've been beat up all year long, and they don't have their full contingent of players. But again, it was a great showing for LaBeouf, and I feel like they played better than every other team, from up north this past weekend.
To me, it goes back to your point that you made just a couple of minutes ago with being ready to play and having been in the moment before. Not that LaBeouf hasn't been in these moments, right? They've been to the semifinals plenty of times in the last few seasons. They've had to play Mercer County opponents a lot in the last few seasons, but Hickory, obviously, with Coach Dungy, has done this plenty of times before. And I think what at least I saw from an outside perspective when I watched the tape of this game, and you did it live, is that it's little moments in games, especially in playoff games, that can turn the tide immensely if the non-favored or maybe the team with the lesser of the 2 rosters makes the mistake. And I think, from my view, what LaBeouf, the mistake that they made, and you mentioned Dominic throwing the ball 30 times, is that as soon as Dungy scored that touchdown run in the 4th quarter, the thought for LaBeouf is we have to score immediately. And I think maybe if the Bison would have attempted to just keep the game plan going, I know you're running out of time, does that pick 6 happen? I don't know. If your thought process on the next drive is to keep the ball on the ground, keep trying to dominate like you have, then maybe you get back in the game. And that's something I think that LaBeouf, maybe Rob, and other Erie County teams can learn. Look, in a playoff game, especially if you're playing a Hickory or Sharon, even if you're down, at that point it was 2 scores, the game's not over. It's not like you're sitting there and you're down, 34-10 at that point. You have to go for the top. There was still time in the game. So that would be my one tidbit, I think, for Fort LaBeouf and other Erie County teams as you go next year into playoffs, is if you're in a situation like that, keep your ground game going, because you were effective, to your point, Rob, in the 2nd and 3rd quarters.
Oh, absolutely. But again, it was just, Dominic scrambled out to the left. It just was Morrison making an unbelievable play. It's tough. And, the crazy thing is they don't play him that much there. But going back to your point, we've talked about it all season long. There is a difference, and we saw it again on Saturday night. There's a difference as far as physicality from the south to the north. And until the north closes that gap, they're not going to get there. And in Northeast, great job, the previous week beating Grove City, but Grove City is not in the category this year of those top 3 teams. They're just not. But again, the North needs to close the distance, the gap, with a physicality aspect that the South has.
It's so funny that you talk about that difference and you look at it in the field and you think, why are the strategies different the way that they are in Erie and Mercer County, where Mercer County is comfortable with going with a spread game? Not that they don't run power, because they do, right? But they have more options. You can run guys in the slot. You can run multiple tight end sets, almost like what we saw GM do this year is what most Mercer County teams do. And you think, well, their offensive lines are big enough for them to just run I-formation power every single play and to gain 7, 8, 10, 12 yards a carry, where Erie County teams, okay, you're not as well sized. Maybe you try to spread the ball out. You try to run outside the hash marks. It's fascinating to me, just the way that football is played differently between Erie and Mercer County. But Mercer County prevails again in that game, and they did as well in the Northeast and Sharon game, which I think you look at the season as a whole, and you look at Region 5, and we said LaBeouf's the most consistent team, and I would agree, but Northeast was the lone team to 9 wins in that region out of all the teams in Region 5, Rob. And just your thoughts on the Northeast Sharon game. I think I was a little surprised at how quickly Sharon got the ball rolling in the game. I thought Northeast would be able to go blow for the first couple of quarters, healthy, rested, ready to go. But to me, this Sharon team, and we both agreed when we talked about last Wednesday, is that we thought of the 2 games that, and maybe you didn't think this, but I thought this. I thought Northeast had the best chance to contend for the longest because I thought their offense was more suited to score points than LaBeouf was. I'm proven wrong in that way. Your thoughts on the Sharon victory over Northeast?
Yeah, I disagree in the fact, and I'm going to go back to the Northeast and LaBeouf game earlier in the year. LaBeouf played a not very good first half against Northeast, and they were missing some key players that game as well. And then the second half, they just came in and blew them out. My whole thing is when I look at everything throughout the year is some of the teams' schedules, common opponents and who they're playing. You look at Sharon, they're battle tested. You're right. Battle tested just alone going off of Hickory and Farrell, and then even throwing Grove City in there.
Totally agree.
And they have some more. Then where you look at Northeast schedule, okay, they had Grove City, but then really other than Fort LaBeouf and Corey, they didn't fare very well in those games. You're not as battle tested. So you come down to the cold weather, you come down to a physical matchup, and we saw Sharon week 1, and they're rolling a little bit more and getting healthier now. Lampkins is back. So I didn't see how much he played at quarterback, but after we saw him, Lampkins was going to be that guy, and he gives them more of a dual threat. And then Terrion White, and then Bishop Root and Stone Root, and we can go down the line. I just felt there was a big discrepancy there. But again, I thought LaBeouf had the better chance of everybody because they were the best team up here.
I'll tell you what, Rob, you and I are going to do our District 10 superlatives either next week or the week after. So stay tuned for that. We're going to list out who we think our player of the year, offense, coach of the year, all that fun stuff is, comeback team of the year, if you will. Terrion White, to me, is in the very short list of conversations for District 10 player of the year. And I don't know if the stats are going to be of the level of what you've seen with other running backs or, quarterbacks, things of that nature. And he may not even be the best player in Mercer County. I'm not saying that he is. But that guy is the most dominant rusher that I have seen this season, and we covered Vinny Feliciano for large portions of the year. The way that guy gets downhill so quickly, Vinny is so talented because he can bounce outside. He can, he can outrun you in almost every facet. Terrion White is able to run past guys in the A-gap. And that's something that we saw, you and I, when we went to Sharon week 1 and we watched this Mercyhurst prep team play them close for a half and then Terrion White take over. He did the same in this game last week. And I was just impressed by the fact that as many guys as they have, whether it's Lampkins, whether it's Root, and I think Engelmore is a better passer than people give him credit for. That's where that offense runs through, and they're comfortable with giving him the ball 35 times a game, and they know he's going to score a few touchdowns and just plow through the defense. I've been impressed with Terrion White a lot, and I knew that he would be good, but he's had such an incredible dynamic year. And to me, when I look at Sharon Hickory, he could be the X factor in my view.
He could. And then until I saw Kelvin Morrison and the speed that he showed and what type of player he was. And then again, like I said, Dungy he's a dude. Dungy is, and he makes a lot go in that rush game and that pass game as well. And when they needed to lean on him, it was tough. It's a flip a coin game. And I would agree. with Terrion White, the assessment and again, and Morrison, they're both right there. And Morrison's got a ton of offers right now. And until I got to see Jules Johnson play on Saturday night, I had a total change because he is that guy. I mean, Jules Johnson, it really is. And that Farrell team, we got to see Sharon play, and then I got to see Hickory play. And that Sharon team, that Farrell team, I think they're better than everybody that we've seen.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about that game, the Mercyhurst Prep Farrell game, in just a second. But before we do, I think it transitions well. Obviously, we don't cover these two teams as much as others do, but we've seen them. You've seen them both. I've seen Sharon. I know Hickory and seen film on Hickory well enough to know how good they are. This is what feels like the 11,000th straight year that they've met in the District 10 championship game. But last year was interesting because the regular season playoff results were flipped. Who do you think wins this, Rob? I know it's a flip a coin game. Clearly, I get that. If you had to pick, who do you think ends up winning this game tomorrow night?
Yeah, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go with Hickory, but I'm not saying that with a whole lot of conviction here because I'll tell you. I mean, Sharon is starting to hit on all cylinders, and it's really tough to beat a team twice, as we saw that last year. So I don't know if Hickory can pull it off again, but I'm going to go with them just as far as leaning on that big offensive line and what I saw Calvin Morrison do. And again, I'm beyond impressed with Dungy. So I'm going to go with Hickory to take it, but like you said, you could flip a coin. It can go either way.
And these games are good. They're always low scoring, which I think clearly indicates that the defenses are very, very well prepared. That to me is high scoring shootouts don't tell me a lot because both these teams can score points at will. But the way the defenses are able to handle the others, especially outside the hash marks and the regular season matchup, are tremendous. I guess for sake of parity, I'll pick Sharon again close. This is a one-score game, no doubt. It's going to come down to the last drive. Probably the team that forces the latest turnover in the game will win. And I know that seems pretty obvious, but it literally, to me, will come down to one defensive play that ends up winning the game. And it'll be fun for those in Mercer County. If you're even remotely a high school football fan, you're probably already planning to go to this game, but you should go to this game anyway because it's going to be a great one. And as we said at the beginning of the year, we figured this would be the District 10 championship game, and it is, but with a little more resistance, at least from Fort LaBeouf, than in previous years in the District 10 3A playoffs. All right, we're going to talk about Mercyhurst Prep in a second. I want to talk about Rubbish Investments first. Of course, they're our title sponsor for our show and this network. They keep financial guidance simple, and if you want more information on Rubbish Investments, you can go to their website, www.rubbishinvestments.com. You also can call their phone number during normal business hours. They're not open now, but they'll be open tomorrow to close out your week on Friday. 814-734-3433 is the number to call, 814-734-3433. Rubbish Investments, keeping financial guidance simple. All right, Rob, let's talk 2A. This was the other game that you saw and the team that you just said, and I would tend to agree with you, that is better in your mind than both Hickory and Sharon, and yet they're a classification below, and that is Farrell. Let's call it what it was, bludgeoning Mercyhurst Prep. And what was most fascinating to me was that Farrell probably played their worst quarter of the season in the first quarter against Mercyhurst Prep and the miscues that they had. Give me your thoughts as to how you saw this game play out. I saw a bit of the first quarter, and I thought, well, okay, maybe it's just Farrell's night to fumble the football away, and this ends up being a slugfest where it's close. And then the second quarter and on happened, and it was just gone from there. Your assessment of the 2A championship game in a game that we thought Farrell would win, but maybe not as convincingly, at least in my book, as I thought would be 52-0.
Well, the one thing that really stood out to me is we rolled into Titusville's field.
Beautiful field.
Oh, the home of John Heisman. We were blown away. And I can't tell you the stone architecture, the wall, how they kept it, and just I think it's one of the best facilities in D10. And the sight lines, the viewing from the box was absolutely incredible. But the crazy thing is we rolled in there at 4:30. We weren't even supposed to be there till 5 to get up in the press box. And who's there before we are? The Farrell buses, the vans, the buses. The coaches were standing by the gate. The players were still on the bus. They couldn't wait to get off the bus. Again, just like Hickory and Sharon, you can tell that they've been there, they've done this. But the game started out in really good shape, other than the fact that when Mercier's had the ball, they had 2 rushes, and I think they gained a total of 10 yards. There's an Everett Cotterill fumble, and he made a heads-up play by just being able to keep Farrell to a safety because it looked like it was there were Farrell players everywhere. Kickoff after the safety, big return by Farrell to midfield. Mercier swarms him, fumbles. Mercier has the ball in good field position. They pick up a first down. Not much more after that. Farrell takes over, takes it down the field. Another fumble, and both those fumbles were recovered by senior linebacker Cass Steinbaugh, who really played hard early on. And those things, Mercier's was able to move the ball a little bit early on. Vinny ran, I'll tell you what, Vinny only had 70 yards, but he played hard offensively. He earned every yard that he got. Tyler Quinn, same thing, played really hard, earned everything. And the key, though, and even defensively, I mean, Vinny was really a man possessed defensively. And I look at times with Zaire Lockett and Steinbaugh, the difference was Farrell everybody was feeding off certain things. And I'll tell you, Farrell has defensively packages with 6'5", 360 pounds, Miles Hinton, and his guy that's in the one tech at defensive tackle next to him is 5'11", 290 pounds, Crumby, and Hilton made him look small. But the thing that really stood out to me about Farrell on defense, and I was really blown away, is the freshman linebacker Dante Gillespie. This kid's like 6 foot, 180 pounds. Mm-hmm. And if you watch the tape, you'd think he's a senior. His read steps are incredible. Scrapes off tackles, scrapes off guards, and just seeks the ball. And the difference that I thought with Farrell and then other teams that we saw this year, their linebackers, their secondary guys, when they come up, they are looking to punish you every single play. And the speed that they play with on defense is just astounding. And then you factor in when they got bogged down a little bit, Mercier's was doing a really good job defensively, and you talk to it. So, when you look at them and say, okay, they're going to line up in spread and do some things here and there, but they're a power spread team. When they got bogged down, they started following, Pegues started following Jules Johnson through the hole on quarterback ISO, quarterback power, and they were able to chunk up yards. And then Jules Johnson got going. And then you talk about it. Jules Johnson, 4 touchdowns, the Nebraska-bound guy. When he runs the ball, he's shot out of a cannon. Vinny's physical. This kid's physical in another manner. Nebraska's going to get a tremendous one. But I thought that there were times that Mercier's played well, and same thing as what happened with LeBuff. Everything in that first quarter was going right for Mercier's. If it's not, that might be a 60-0 or 70-0 game. That's how good Farrell is. But again, like we talked about, the physicality is an entirely different brand.
Yeah, you make a great point, and I first of all, I think it's unfair for someone in District 10 to be 6'5", 350, because I mean, it's an unblockable person unless you bring Cooper Cousins back for a 5th year of eligibility, right, and you put him on Mercier's prep. But I'm with you. I think when you look at Farrell, and I even think we talk about the Mercer County dominance in 3A. I think it's even more prevalent. I would say it's even more prevalent with Farrell in 2A in the way that they've just been able to churn out wins after wins after wins. And Jules Johnson will certainly be in contention, might be the favorite for District 10 Player of the Year. I don't know. I haven't seen him play. But, for Mercier's prep, Rob, I think I don't want to call this a confusing season. They had a really tough schedule, right? And 6 wins is nothing to sneeze at against the quality of competition that they played. But I think if you're Jeff Root, you look back on this season, and I think – the nice thing that they will have at least going into next year is a lot of those guys come back, especially in the skill position players, right? You're going to get, in theory, everyone stays. Tyler Quinn back, Vinny's back for one more season. There are other skill position guys that will be a big part of the offense. But, you wonder, the question becomes, and this will be all in classification, right? We don't know if they're going to move down to 1A. That's all going to play itself out in December. But what you need to do to compete with these teams, and you wonder what recipe might be there, Rob, because again, it's been, you get to the finals in the last few years for the most part, and you just can't get over the hump with Farrell.
Yeah, and that's a big rumor. And I think people, out of the Mercyhurst camp, and they made it kind of clear that it looks like they're going to go down to 1A. But until I see it, I'm not going to believe anything. That was from the press box. That was from radio guys and TV guys up there. They were telling us this, and we had heard this. Mercyhurst has a ton of skill guys back. The freshman AJ Horton didn't play. You're bringing back Feliciano Quinn. JT Jones didn't play in the playoffs. Bridget didn't play in the playoffs. Ian Elman Sparks comes back. They're going to lose some key guys, though, up front. When you look at Innerleiter, you look at Lockett, and you look at Sermonera from guard, center to guard, it's going to be how well and then the leadership that Joey Jordan can provide up front, and the other guys that they're going to have to replace, because they're going to have to bring in 3 new guys up front. Kaz Steinbaugh is a huge piece. Kingston Nolan on defense is a huge piece. So they are going to lose some key guys, but their roster, and we've said it, their roster from top to bottom is almost as good as anyone's. It's just putting the pieces together. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the physicality aspect of it. And, we'll see where it goes. But even if they go down to 1A, it's not an easy stretch by any means, because you're going to have Wilmington down there. And rumor was Greenville's going to go up to 2A, but then somebody said, well, that could have been a numbers error. Again, it's all rumors. But regardless, Wilmington's down there. Reynolds is not an easy out by any means. But skill-wise, Mercyhurst next year, I mean, they're loaded for bear. They really are. So again, it's just going to be, are they going to get over that hump? And I think that they need to continue to build a very strong schedule. If they do go down to 1A, it wouldn't hurt them to schedule Farrell during the regular season at all, because they're going to need those games. And like you said before, Mercer County teams, the teams down in South, they don't shy away from scheduling teams. I mean, look what Farrell did with their schedule. And Farrell's got a tough one this week, but I mean, that's going to play dividends. And if they do get through this week, it helps them tremendously.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm fascinated to see what the realignment's going to look like, in about a month or so from now. I think it will be fascinating to see which teams move down, move up, and we'll touch on a little bit of that later in later episodes when we get reaction. Again, like Rob said, it's all speculation, it's all rumors until we know anything. And we're hearing a lot of things, but we just don't know until it actually happens. So we'll have to see what ends up happening with that. So there's your 2A. Farrell moving on to states. Hickory Sharon coming up tomorrow in a big game. Let's talk about the team that we have covered the most out of the teams that are still alive, that's still in. And I think everyone forgets about Oil City, and they're going to get Punxsutawney, who won their sub-regional, to be able to get to this game in what will be a home game at the Oil Field for the Oilers. We know that crowd's going to be crazy going this weekend when they face Punxsutawney. Rob, it's fascinating. I was looking a little bit at this and doing some research and homework ahead of this episode. And we had talked all season long about the great defenses of District 10, right? How General McLean's defense had been tremendous, and they had been, right? Corey had played good defense. Northeast had a lot of teams. Hickory and Sharon play amazing defenses. Greenville, they're in Region 2. We know Farrell in Region 1. But quietly throughout the year, and I'm not saying that they play the most difficult schedule on planet Earth, but Oil City's defense had been one of the most consistent. And we saw it in the district championship game. And what's been most amazing to me is that the toughest games that they've played all year, their defense has been the best, right? Even the General McLean game early in the season, 28 was among the lowest results that the Lancers had gotten all season long. Meadville, the defense clamped down. Erie High allowing 20 points to that team that can score a lot of points, and you've talked about they had no business being in that game with the Royals when they played in October. And then, of course, the District 10 championship where they force 4 turnovers and they score just enough points, 16 to beat GM is crazy to think about, but they get it done. Let's look ahead to this weekend of the Punxsutawney game here, Rob. We know the strategy on offense for Oil City, but the more I think about this, the more I feel like the defense is good enough to keep them in any game. Maybe not against WPIAL teams, maybe not against teams from Philadelphia, but this round of states, to me, there is an avenue for this Oil City team to compete because we didn't think they could do it against GM, and they did. And to me, I think if GM was playing Punxsutawney, we'd think GM would have a really good shot of winning this game.
Yeah, and they're not. And Oil City, though, when you look at this game, I mean, this game matches up really well. Punxsutawney's only loss was the Carn City, who Farrell will play. A 2A school and a really good program. And, Punxsutawney beat DuBois. They also beat Carn City because they played them twice this season. But when you look at Punxsutawney, they've got a 1,000-yard rusher, but they have one guy. Their quarterback had tricks thrown for 1,650 yards. But I think when you look at Oil City, and you said it, Meadville was a lot better than their record, and that's a rivalry game. They played GM tough, and then to come back and beat GM, they played Erie really tough. They really didn't have business winning that game at all. They were so athlete on that field,
yep.
And speed-wise was huge. But they're built for this weather. They're a physical team. They have a nasty big line. I'm thinking of Sparks, and then we saw Noah Lucarelli, nasty.
Mm-hmm.
You have Stephen Heights, the running back, Braden Buzzard, the fullback linebacker. These are physical, nasty guys. My son Mills, he's a little bit of a burner there, and Baker, good wide receiver. And then the guy that makes it all work, and I know you really like him, and that's Cole Finley. So yeah. I think that being a home game, it matches up really well. And like you said, to get out, you have to have a really special team then to be able to advance to the WPIAL to beat them. But I think that they have a really good shot against Punxsutawney.
I agree. And I think when you look at the game plan from 2 weeks ago, if I'm Dan York, I'm just going to rinse, recycle, and repeat because it is, in terms of skill positions, similar to what they saw in GM. In fact, maybe not even many in terms of depth at skill position that General McLean had.
Right.
And what Oil City did, and I thought they did a really good job of this, is they said, okay, Matt Carey, you've had a great year. You've done incredible things, but we're going to force you to throw the ball in 2.5 seconds. And we're going to hope that the defensive secondary is good enough, and they were, with Cole Finley back there, with Landon Baker playing back there on defense, Maishawn Mills dabbled in the free safety spot a few times. They knew that secondary could hold up. And so they would bring 5, they'd bring 6, they'd bring a couple off the edge, right? They'd go heavy and they'd blitz to the weak side. I think that this defense can do that again in this game. And one thing that I think is of note from 2 weeks ago that did not materialize on the score sheet because they didn't connect on anything was that Maishawn Mills drew a lot of double teams from Coach McCormick and General McLean in that game. It left Landon Baker one-on-one. And so my curiosity is that if Punxsutawney does that, right, where they try to double Maishawn in big passing situations, Landon Baker was targeted somewhere around 11 or 12 times in that game. He only made a few catches, but he had a couple of big fourth down pickups. He, to me, is a big X factor in the game because he's a big body wide receiver that can play anywhere on the field. Mills is a big burner. No question they'll throw him deep at least 2 or 3 times in the game. But I think that this offense has enough to be able to score. And the GM defense was no slouch either. I mean, it's not like Oil City. I mean, they moved the ball. They only scored 16 points, but they did move the ball. They had a couple of fourth down possessions that they didn't convert. But with the way that offense was able to at least gain traction on every drive, there were very few 3-and-outs except for early in the fourth quarter. I think we maybe don't give enough credit to Coach York as he deserves, in part because I think in the last few years it's been all about the run, right? Because the quarterback play hasn't been great. Now you throw in Cole Finley, and it adds an extra layer to this offense, Rob. And I think there's a lot of people, maybe I'm wrong in my assessment here, but there's a lot of people that are turning their heads and thinking, well, Oil City's been here for the last decade or 15 years, and no one really ever talks about them because they're boring and they only run the ball. This is, to me, with Cole Finley this year and the win against GM, it is a statement that, look, this team has been here a long time. And now they have more than one way to beat you, which is a scary premise to think about.
Yeah, and people could say boring, but here's the thing. We talked about it before. Football's cyclical. What's old is new. They do some things that are old school as far as they'll line up in the eye and they'll go in many different formations out of the eye. They run power, they run counter, and they run ISO, and they run toss sweep. But the thing is, they're physical. They stand in there. They don't make a lot of mistakes. They're built for the playoffs. They can jump in some spread looks, but Cole Finley, I feel, is really the key to the game, because not only can he beat you throwing the ball, he can beat you running the ball as well. And he is a big weapon running the ball. And like you said, Dan York, when you talk about teams, well, I don't want to say North, because they're, when I'm thinking North, I'm thinking of GM and LaBeouf, and then everything else is different after that. But they're very physical in everything that they do. They may not have the speed that some other teams have, but they are very physical. And we talked about it before. You don't have the all-time top two leading rushers in Knox and Reddick when he was at Lakeview, if you're not doing things right. So again, I really give them a big shot and a big edge. And I feel like the schedules are very equal of what they've played, because, Punksy has played some good teams on that schedule as well.
Someone once told me that there's a difference between fast and quick, and I'm more scared by people who are quick than people who are fast. And I would deem Oil City as a quick team, not because they have a ton of speed, but because they get up on you so fast. And I think GM learned that 2 weeks ago, is that within a second and a half, 2 seconds of the ball being snapped, Matt Caro had a guy on his back almost every single play. And they get on you quick, they move the ball quick, they advance on the offensive line quick. And if you're not ready for it, it gets to you, no pun intended, quickly. And I think that that's something that Oil City's done all year, and they have a chance to do it again this weekend. They're going to host Punxsutawney. I think it's going to be a really fascinating game. Very excited to see how this one plays. We're hoping Oil City, of course, can move on and get to that Whitfield stage of the state playoffs. And best of luck to Dan York, because they're on a roll right now, and they're 9-1. That's 9-1. Right. Is nothing at all to sneeze at, with a couple of the big wins that they've had, including General McLean. All right, Rob, we're going to finish up this show with an early look into next season, some thoughts, news, and musings from what we think could be happening in 2026. And speaking of 2026 in the future, you want to make sure your future is secure. Who better to turn to than Revich Investments? They do one thing so well. They keep financial guidance simple, making sure that your assets, investments, and more are safe and secure for years and decades to come. If you want more info on Revich Investments, go to the website, www.revicinvestments.com, or you can call their phone number during business hours at 814-734-3433, 814-734-3433. All right, so there's still a long time till next year. The year hasn't even technically ended yet, and we hope that these District 10 teams can move as far as they can in the state playoffs. But I wanted to jump a little bit into next year, Rob, with, the potential for classification realignments, but, for teams next year, maybe coaching moves, again, all of this speculation. But, I want to start with this. You look at the landscape of District 10, and let's talk Erie, Crawford County as a whole. What are some of the teams that are going to bed this month, that are going to have Thanksgiving, going to go through Christmas, and the head coaches are thinking, I really like what we have in 2026. Give me your rundown of teams that we should be excited about right now for next year as we stand on this November 13th, 2025.
There's a lot.
Yeah.
Jeff Root should be feeling, forget that loss right now, and it's time to move on. But, there's a couple tweaks that they're going to need to do, but he should feel good with what they have coming back. But I think the big team that should feel really good, and we talked about them since last year with this junior class, is Fort LaBeouf. For what they're going to bring back their entire offensive line. They're going to bring back their quarterback. They're going to bring back Xavier Blos. They played so many young guys on defense. Their only issue is, replacing Black and Sadowski at that defensive end spots.
Yeah.
And then, they're going to have to see, is it going to be Strushin? Is it going to be Black? Is it going to be the Huck kid? Who's going to step up in that running back situation? But they have Dominic Walters, who is one of the better district or dual quarterbacks in District 10. You look at McLean. McLean's very interesting because they lose a lot. You're
Yeah.
going to have the brother turn it over to Josh Carroll.
Right.
You know, the running back looks like, the early favorite to lead things is Charlie Bennett. And then you have Caden Holler, and, they're going to have a lot to replace. You look at Prep. I don't see why Prep wouldn't go down. Again, it's speculation, but why wouldn't they go down to 4A now? They're eligible to go down to 4A. They had a heavy senior receiving core with Oblick and their quarterback being a senior. But I believe Desiree Carson's back. You look at Gerard. Rumor is Gerard's going down to 2A, which will be helpful for them. But then again, they lose a lot when you look at their roster.
Right.
But they have St. Julian back. They have Aiden Arnold back. I believe, I'm not positive, but from everything that I heard, and I didn't get to go out and see any JV games, but I believe they in Northeast did not play a JV schedule this year. So that does kind of hurt. But going down to 2A will help them, especially if Mercyhurst drops to 1A. Even though that the regions may still stay the same as far as that, and maybe Gerard pops in there. Corey, they're going to have to go with Van Carey. The running backs are back. They lose a ton as far as at the receiver position. Harbor Creek, they've got Gavin Zillman back. They've got Powers. They've got their tackle, their guards back. But they do lose some key guys too. It's going to be interesting. Then you look at McDowell. McDowell's got to feel pretty good with the schedule that they played. And then to be able to have a healthy Kuhn and a Flemings, they've got to feel really good. Erie, they're going to have to go with Smith at running back and hopefully some of these other guys, and I cannot think of the freshman's name right now, but then they lean on Masson at quarterback. And they also do have their big 6'8" offensive lineman, Edwin Guzman, that he comes back, the Syracuse offer guy right there.
Yeah.
So, there's all kinds of crazy scenarios to look at, but I have to go with LaBeouf has to feel the best, honestly, to be able to return an offensive line intact, even with some of the backups that they played, all those young guys that they played in the secondary. I got to feel that, they've got to feel better than anybody at this point.
I think it's so fascinating, and thank you for mentioning the Region 5 and going down the list of teams, because it feels like almost every team gets their quarterback back, but almost every team loses the skill position players that had around that quarterback from this season. For LaBeouf, to me, I think they've become the favorite again. We don't know what the classifications regions look like. We just assuming of what we know now, they will be the favorite in R5, 3A, certainly from Erie County teams, assuming everybody stays. I do think that Northeast getting Bryson Galloway back will certainly help, and I'm fascinated to see what they do off the back of the 9-3 season, and a season in which their offense really sparked. Losing Carter Crozier hurts a ton. Yeah. Losing other skill position players that are seniors hurts a ton. But I just think that when you look at the whole of Northeast, they're a team that's on the up and up. And from what I've been told, their pipeline, even without their JV, is starting to get better than what it used to be. I think you look up at the Region 3s of the world, Mercyhurst Prep, like you said, they'll be the overwhelming favorite. Seneca will be feisty again. It'll be curious to see what they do minus Rylan Harwood, who is a senior this season. Dalton Boyd got to throw a little bit this season, but not a ton. But again, they do get more skill position players back than I think most, right? Because Zach Moats is going to be back as a junior as the running back there for the Bobcats. So they become a big team in Region number 3. I think Cambridge Springs, even without Britt Cania, could be a team too as well to look at, especially if classifications switch from 1A to 2A and you see a team like a Greenville go up, right? Then Cambridge Springs becomes right back there in the thick of things with, okay, now you're looking at Wilmington as your really, really big competition. To potentially be one of those teams when you go forward, and then I think too, and this is something that maybe I'm a little off in this, but when I think you look at maybe an under the radar team that could potentially be a little bit sneaky, and a team in which This year they won 7 games. Conneaut gets almost everybody back next season.
Yes.
And I know that they didn't play the greatest schedule in the world, and I totally understand that, but they got 7 wins. Mason Stone, their quarterback, comes back. They get all but one of their top receivers back from this season. And oh, by the way, their 2 top runners were juniors. In fact, their 3 top runners were juniors because they're going to get Chase Meter, Aiden Ford, and Wyatt Luke back next season, assuming they all want to play football. So keep an eye out on Conneaut. And if there are a few teams in 3A that drop to 2A, they would be in, for me, firm contention of being right back in the 3A playoffs. So a lot of teams to look out for. But I think that there's certainly a lot of potential parity again next season, Rob, because we'll see the star position players back, but maybe new talent emerging on the outside in the backfield for these teams that we're focusing on in Erie County.
Yeah, and I apologize about missing Northeast when I was running down the line because I had them marked down. And Bryson Galloway, what a season he had, and Ringer, he's back as well. So and they'll have some other key guys that are back. And we talked about it before. I think with what they put together throughout the season and beating Grove City not once, but twice. I think Chris Grahowski has to be, in there for our coach of the year. He definitely, I would say at this point, has my vote. They've done some really great things, and he's been around a state championship team, and Chris does an unbelievable job, Skip as we call him, but. Yeah, and that community is going to take a lot of pride. And you brought up about Cambridge Springs. They're always tough. They're always good. And I mean, we could go down the list of teams, and that Cash team, you're correct on that. And that right there is a tough place to have to go down and play at.
Yes.
And you're right. I mean, this could turn around into being one of those special Cash teams, like they had that knocked off Prep in the District 10 championship game.
Yeah, it seems like so long ago that we forget that. But again, that was the Hunter Merritt year, and they had a similar roster, I think, to maybe what they have coming up next year with their quarterback back, their 3 best rushers back, and they've got a good team down there, no doubt. They'll be good next year. Other thoughts, Rob, when we look to next season? I know you have a lot of notes written down. What are some of the things that you think will be the big storylines going into next season as we start to not turn the page on this year, but maybe look ahead over the horizon?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many. I mean, right now, I'm just excited to see when these numbers finally come out and who's where. We're assuming that Prep is going to go down. And it sounds like Girard is as well, and Mercier's too. But until we see them on paper, we don't know. And then once the schedules come out, and the bad thing is District 10 is notoriously slow for getting schedules done. And I remember when we used to try to schedule, it was always tough because you're so late. And some teams need to go into Ohio, some teams need to go into New York. And they don't wait for District 10 to get their schedules out. And so those are tough, and you do miss out on some games right there. But, I look at teams that are struggling, Iroquois. What do they need to do to get over the hump? Then I look at that Union City team that didn't play Merciers, and they were really young this year. Can something be done and turn those around? Braden and I talked about it before. Small town football to me is fascinating. Especially we've seen some of the greatest atmospheres this year by going into some of the small towns. Corey was just tremendous.
I would 100% agree. And to your point with Union City, you talk about teams that get people back. I'm not even sure there's any seniors on Union City. It doesn't feel like there's any seniors on UC's team.
Maybe one, but I mean, and that's to talk about later. But they've got to change some things and go in some different directions as these teams that are struggling do, as far as maybe philosophies or what they're doing, and they have to make it a really hostile, tough environment for a team to be able to come to play, because they're not going to be able to play a brand of football, say that Greenville is, or Mercier's Prep is. So they're going to have to be able to find something different.
Yeah, my big storylines for the season coming up, and this is all speculation off teams moving classes, but it's going to be a if this, then that. I think you're going to potentially see 1A become really loaded, right? If Mercyhurst Prep drops, if the rest of the 1A teams stay the same, I think you could see a ridiculously fascinating 1A class with an 18 playoff field that would be beyond stacked next season if the teams end up moving down that we think could move down. I think 3A will be fascinating along with Region 5 because it's the quarterback but who else show for a lot of these teams. And I think the big question then becomes, is Fort LaBeouf, with almost everybody back, going to be able to get over the semifinal hump of 3A, assuming everyone stays where they're at? The biggest storyline for me, and this is maybe a personal one for me, but I would love to see this, if Prep moves to 4A, could you imagine, knowing that Meadville and Oil City are always right there, a 4-team playoff bracket that includes General McLean, Cathedral Prep, Oil City, and Meadville? That would be an unbelievably fun semifinals and a final. And personally, GM and Prep twice a season, potentially, sign me up. I would sign up for that in 2 seconds. I think the rest of the community would sign up for that in 2 seconds. I think you're going to start to see, and this is, maybe I'm wrong on this. Again, there's only so many games in the schedule. I think you're going to start to see more GM versus 6A and 5A current classes a little bit more. I think, McDowell potentially is going to be a team that GM would want to schedule. And then when you look at McDowell, you're right. If Evan Kuhn can stay healthy, this year, this was a team that could have made some real noise. And again, if he stays healthy next year, they could make some noise again too. So I think it's all fascinating, Rob. I think the biggest storyline from this season was that Erie County got a lot closer. But where are they going to be moving forward? And so we'll have to see. It's going to be an incredible next season. But, we wish the best of luck to the Hickories, the Sharons, the Farrells, and the Oil Cities of the world. And I think especially since we've seen Oil City this year, really would love to see more teams make it to next weekend and further into states.
Yeah, and Wilmington as well, and Greenville. That's really interesting. Wilmington, they turn around and they had I believe it was 4 backs over 600 yards this year, and a ridiculous amount. I think they had 49 rushing touchdowns. So you don't know what they're going to do noise wise, but it's going to be very interesting. All I know is there's some tough teams waiting on the other side in the Whippeal if anybody makes it out.
No doubt. And that's always the case, right? That's the matchup that you have to play if you end up getting to the next round of states. And so we will see. It's going to be a fun next couple of weeks. Rob and I will be back next week to talk more reaction to high school football. And we'll also, in the next couple of weeks, give out some superlatives for who we think would be the player of the year, team of the year, comeback team of the year, freshman of the year, all that fun stuff. We'll give out some superlatives. Rob, great stuff as always, my friend. It's always great to talk to you, and hope it's a good weekend. Hope no more snowfalls, because we got a lot of stuff again, and I'm sure you don't want to shovel your driveway at 5 a.m. either. No, I don't. And good luck to you. And I know you're going to be very busy, and good luck with Braden also. That great pickup there on your part. Yeah, I can't wait to have him. He's going to call some hoops games for us on Saturday. He's done some great stuff with us at WPSC, and maybe we have him on the show next Wednesday. I'll shoot him a text and see if we can get him on for some superlatives for District 10 too. Oh, he'd love it. He'd love it. That 19-year-old kid that's like 40 and eats and drinks sports. So absolutely. Man, flashback to my days. I feel like I was him when I was that age. So he's great. You're great, man. And thanks again. I appreciate you, Rob. Appreciate it. Awesome as always. And I got to get on the Otters train here real quick. Yes, you do. We're going to be doing some live shows. So make sure, study up. Big games coming up in the end of the month. All right, buddy. All right. Rob Matz joining us as always on the show. We thank him again so much for his time. He's just been so incredible for us on this show for High School Football Insight. And we're not done, of course. We've got more High School Football Insight to talk to you about next week, and more just exciting content, because there could be a lot of interesting things that percolate in the month of December and the months to follow as high school football continues to take more turns. We don't want to forget about other high school sports as well. I want to end the show with 2 shout-outs, and we hope to have one or both on the show next week. First, 2 teams that are competing in the state championship game for their respective sports. Congratulations to Fairview Boys Soccer, who has pretty much decimated the entire Whippeal in their run to the state championship. The boys team, we had Sunny Vidakovic on the show a couple of weeks ago. They're going to take on Lewisburg tomorrow in the state championship game. Really haven't, and I hate to say this because Sonny would say otherwise, but really haven't had much stress, at least in terms of scoreboard. They've won their state playoff games 7-0, 4-0. They just beat Deer Lakes 3-1, a team that has had to go through Prep and Fairview a few times in previous iterations of the state playoffs. So congratulations to Fairview boys. They're playing for a state championship less than 24 hours from now when they take on the team from District 4, Lewisburg, who won 1-0 in order to make the state final themselves. And then how about Maplewood volleyball? I'll tell you what, Maplewood girls volleyball and Crawford County volleyball is the toast of the town when it comes to this area in terms of volleyball success. They're in the state championship game as well. That's not till Saturday. They're going to take on Tri-Valley at 10:30 at Cumberland Valley in Mechanicsburg. Maplewood, they have nearly swept their way to the state final. 3-0 win in the first round. 3-1 win in the quarters, 3-0 in the semifinals. So they are rolling as well. Tri-Valley is their opponent. So Maplewood trying to bring another state championship home to Crawford County. So congratulations to those 2 teams. Hope to have one or both on the show next week or in the coming weeks after. So still Erie and Crawford County teams alive in state tournaments, just not in football right now. So I know we don't get a chance to get to them all the time, but congratulations to both those teams. Proud of all of you, and we're happy that we get to keep talking about fall sports playoffs with winter sports around the pike coming up in just a couple of weeks from now. All right, that does it for our show tonight. Long show, but a great show. Thanks again to Rob Matz for joining us tonight. We appreciate, as always, his insights. Join us next week. We've got a great show planned for you. We'll be back in the saddle on Wednesday. Off the record, we'll have a brand new episode Thursday as well. High school football rapid reaction is done for the year. We'll react to games on Wednesday of next week's show. Talk Oil City, Farrell in their first round against Karnes City in the Course Hickory Sharon District 10 championship game. We'll react to as well coming up next Wednesday. So stay tuned. Our next show is coming up on Monday. Rust Belt Rundown with Nick Artman, Paul Adams. We hope it's a more positive show than it was the case on Monday with all 3 of our local teams. Take care, everybody. This is Ben, the Gems of the Sports Podcast, brought to you by Rebus Investments. Follow us on socials. Watch our next show Monday at 7:30. Till then, everybody, have yourself a great rest of your week.